This is Patricia Windrow once again at the Cable Easel with a program which is devoted to painting and drawing from life. And when landscapes are in order, it's done electronically. A camera goes out and finds a scene and shoots for about a half an hour or 40 minutes, and then it's projected here on the monitor, which is the closest way we can get outside. So this is part 2 of a study of a canal in Bayshore with houses in the on the other side of the canal, and boats and water and all these good things that we pay such high taxes to enjoy. The first part of it, of course, was the background, because that's the farthest part away. And here is the little study of the houses that border this canal, probably beloved by everybody who lives there, and very well manicured, very well taken care of, represents a tremendous amount of effort. And here are the results, and the portrait of a house, of course, many times is just as interesting to the viewer as it is to the owner of the house. Of course, far more so if the painting is in an area which is paintable. Many times I have been commissioned to do portraits of people's houses, and that's because they're so picturesque, and of course also because there is such a tremendous life investment. Here is the as I'm talking, I'm putting in an impression of what the dock side of this little canal is, because there are many more details to do and barely a half an hour in which to do it. So Impressionism, of course, is also part of this realist painting thing, because you have to be able to differentiate between the important part of a composition and just the incidentals. The dock, of course, is an incidental, but it's there, and it has to be shown, because it would not make sense if it weren't there. The painting, the marine painting, of course, covers many realms. The Great Wave, of course, was painted by the Japanese many hundreds of years ago, and then, of course, there was Winslow Homer, who did those remarkable watercolors and oils of the Caribbean areas. Long Island has been painted extensively by the old classic people, William Sidney Mount being one of the best, and there are other painters that are living on Long Island and painting beautifully, and here I am on television doing studies of this area, which of course we find so eternally fascinating. The little bit of architectural painting that I do is involved when you find a scene which is not only picturesque but also has human habitation, namely buildings and so on. I've done a number of buildings, and the one behind me, of course, is not a building, but it's the Captree Bridge, and and then there's the church and so on. But when I do marine paintings, I like to be able to combine the quality of fine art as opposed to postcard art. Postcard art is very easy to fall into the trap, because you find a picturesque place, and the next thing you know, you've done a rather detailed study of this picturesque spot, and then you stand back and it looks like one of the postcards. So what you have to do is to find that tricky balance in between the two, between the postcard art and fine art. So here I'm mixing right there in the water area, as I've said before. If you're out there painting in the environment, you would like to be able to make that kind of experience as painless as possible, and carrying a lot of equipment can be actually painful. Even though we have cars, you still have to get to the site, and so carrying a pallet is sometimes totally unnecessary, because I can work right on the canvas and then incorporate it later or wash it off at the last minute in the lower left or right hand corner. But using a palette knife also is a good idea, because it covers large spaces of canvas in a very short space of time, because you are in fact dealing with the elements. And the fact that the sun has that lovely habit of changing position rather rapidly during the day, and if you find yourself taking too long to mix colors and to put them on, your light has changed dramatically and time has escaped you, and then you find an unfinished picture full of the need to go back the next day or sometime when you have time. So here I'm putting these large areas of color in with the palette knife. I may smooth it out with a brush, or I just may leave it rough the way the palette knife does. And palette knife is one of my favorite techniques. Anyway, I think that anybody who's been watching the show for a while knows that I use it very, very often for more than just landscapes. I will use it for still life and so on. I'm leaving a lot of the shadow area here unpainted. There's no point in putting it in, because this is all extremely dark underneath here. I think that if you look at the reference material, you'll find that there is a lot of shadow underneath the boat. Here, before I go any further, I'll tell you what the colors are that I'm using. I'm mixing ultramarine blue, the quick drying MG white, and I didn't mix enough, so I had to go back and do a bit more. When I tell you the colors that I use, it's because I'm working quickly, and my calls when I'm on live tell me that I make it look so easy, so I like to sort of make you realize that it's not really easy. I do it quickly because I'm experienced. But if you do make a mistake or don't mix enough color, that is a lesson to be learned. Also, that you have to remember the colors that you use. So it isn't just a question of being mystified by the colors that you mix, but it's also trying to determine just how much you do mix. The right side of this picture is going to be made interesting, I think, to balance the darkness of the boat on the left side by the intense shadow of that great tree that is dominating the left side of the canvas. I mean the right side, depending upon which way you're looking at it. The darkness is equally as important, tone value is equally as important in balance as objects. Objects sometimes need to be put in order to make a balanced composition, but also color can do the same thing. And so I'm using that as a sample to tell you that the color over here on the right of that big tree is going to act as a balancing agent. I'm going to use some pure ultramarine for the color, some green, which may come as a shock, a little bit of this nice sort of mauve tone, to see if I can get the rich darkness of that shadow. And I'm going to put that in right now because the boat has got to be put on it, so next to it. The layering of these colors are something that I talk about quite often on my live program. When people call me up and ask me, you know, in which direction do you go? Why do you start in such and such a place? You start from the distant place, which of course becomes somewhat of a background for the rest of the stuff, for the rest of the composition. I'm putting in this shadow with the observation that the surface water is rather agitated, probably because it's a small area. The canal is a confined area, and the water tends to become more agitated than in a larger one. When you step back from a lake, many times you will find that the water appears to be extremely smooth. In a canal, the slightest motion in the water is going to cause surface agitation, which means that the reflections are going to be affected by that. That's all you're doing, is you're dealing with the surface agitation of the water. let me see if I have to be able to step back, and stepping back here means that I'm going to be looking at the monitor and see whether or not the this reflection of this great tree really works. If it doesn't, I go back and I refine it. I have calls from people who ask me, what do you mean by refine? And so refining means to once again check out and see whether or not you have made the illusion what you want it to be. Illusion is what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with a perfectly flat surface, namely the canvas, and the application of paint to give the illusion that you're looking at something, well, which is quasi-real. So there is one of the maybe a feeling that shadow works. Immediately into that, because the time is going to be so short, I'm going to put the piling. And the piling is, let's see, it's approximately here. It goes up this high, and I'm picking up some color as I go. So that piling should be indicative enough. It's far enough away. So what you really want is an impression of it. The bottom part of it, I believe, has turned quite dark because of the, well, what happens to these pilings in the water. They tend to get dark and really, really sort of worn looking. And then the shadow of that is within the shadow of the tree, which is another one of the fascinations about reflections, that there can be two types of reflections, a reflection of this piling in the reflection of the tree. Something that maybe is not observed by everybody, and hoping that this is the kind of a program that is going to make you notice these things. Seeing, of course, is an acquired pastime, and what I do is, because I deal in visuals, I see things sometimes maybe that other people will be happy for me to point out to them. Not that I'm special, but it's my training, or it's my avocation. Here in the distance is this red boat, I'm sure beloved by the owner more than maybe anything else in the world. The boat is an extraordinary possession to have. It's benign, it looks benign, it sits out there in the water ready to receive the owner at any time, and then at the same time it requires an enormous amount of attention and energy, and, not to leave it out, money. So here's this red boat, the apple of the owner's eye, I am sure, or the curse, who can tell? They say that the two most happy days of one's life is the day that you buy the boat, and the second one is the day you sell it. Well, be that as it may, it is sitting there without a reflection, a condition that I don't understand. I'm not sure why this particular boat does not have a reflection. All I can see that it has is a rather dark line down by the water. So I think that in order to make it more comprehensible, I probably am going to invent or put in, and if it doesn't work, I'll take it out, a slight indication that there is a reflection here. The surface of the water is agitated, so maybe that's what prevents it from having a reflection, but let me put it in anyway. That's called the creative license that you have when you've got the gall to get up in front of many people and paint something from life. If I did it in my private studio, you'd never know that I invented it. In any case, the need to get to the foreground, and this boat in the foreground is upon us, and this is a gray boat. It's more than likely a lapstrake. I believe that that's the term for that type of boat, and it occupies a large part of the picture. That's too dark, so I'm going to add right on the canvas here more of the white, because if I made it too dark, then I would not be able to put the shadows of the lapstrake in. Just part of the boat is pale. The rest of it falls into shadow. Boats are extremely irritating to paint. They are very strange to draw. They do all sorts of horrible things in perspective, and anybody with any sense at all is going to find out how to draw this thing before you paint it. Anyway, this is a semi-impression of this boat, which has a lovely curve to the bow. I think that bow is a really pretty shape. And a lot of it is in shadow. A lot of it is down by the water line, and when the paint sets a little bit, I'm going to then do the shadow of the lapstrake. Isn't that a weird word? Anyway, that's what it is. That's what I found out. My son has owned a boat, and I was given the task of painting and removing barnacles for a long time, so I kind of got the gist of it. And as I say, the happiest day of my life was when that thing was sold. So be it for the amateur boat owner. When you live by the water, it seems to be de rigueur that you own a boat. The bottom here is a copper, I believe it's a copper tone paint. They're all sort of deep reddish sienna, brown, something or others. And during the break, I'm going to squeeze out some alizarin crimson, which I don't have on my palette. I have plenty of colors on my palette, but I do not have the alizarin crimson, which I didn't think I was going to need for this composition. In any case, the inside of the boat looks to me like it's got a dark mahogany-looking inside wraparound for the prow here, and I'm putting that in as long as I've got it on my brush. It's something that I try to emphasize when I'm showing people how I do this, because when you have a color on your brush, it's wise to look around and see whether it's needed anywhere else. This is a border on the deck part. I don't know what this boat is called. It's got some strange kind of superstructure in there, which looks to me like a combination sunshade and fishing fly deck or something. So it's and it doesn't have its sunshade on, just the armature for it. But I'm trying to decipher it. This is what happens when you're out there. You see things that you're not quite sure of, and so as long as I'm not sure of that, I'm going to peruse it a little bit further, take a very short break, and come back after I've squeezed my red paint. So don't go too far. Back again with the elusive alizarin crimson here, and you may find this interesting to see that I was concerned about getting the right color in the bottom of this boat. So so much for Impressionism. I'm so locked into the idea of being a realist that I want to make sure that the bottom of this boat has got the right color, probably because I've been called on these things before. But this slight introduction of the right color underneath here is the difference between paying attention to detail and just kind of well, letting it all hang loose. I notice that I have the red on my brush here, and I'm going to go and put the canopy on this little boat that's way off there in the distance. There's a little boat with a red canopy way over there, and as long as I've got it on my brush, I'm going to put it in. So as I try to point out sometimes, these things maybe don't seem necessary, except that they're good tips to have, especially if you're out there working furiously against time. And time is what we work against, even just out there in the environment or here in the studio. There's always some constraint of time. I guess that's our lives in general. I'm going to do the reflection underneath the boat and see whether or not we can pull that one off. That one is going to be also extremely dark because summertime makes for dark, dark shadows. And dark shadows also tell you something about the time of day, when it's overhead and the light is coming down in the midday type of arrangement. You'll find that the shadows are extremely dark, and they make for the drama in the picture, and they also make for the authenticity of it. So underneath this boat, even though it's a gray boat, there is an extremely dark shadow. I'm going to grade it a little bit. The grassy area that I decided to eliminate means that this shadow is going to go to the very bottom of the picture. And there will probably be some variation in color down here, but this is going to, the reason that the shadow underneath the tree on the right side, I'm trying to find the balance, and this may be only the concern of the painter, but subliminally the viewer is going to be conscious of the fact that the composition is balanced, maybe not in his direct information, but somewhere along the line it will be pleasing and it will be comprehensible to him. So with a little bit of possibly some invented water disturbance to see whether or not that's going to make any sense at all. If it doesn't, I'll eliminate it. But there has to be some indication that this shadow is not just a blank cutout dark place. So we'll step back a little bit and see whether or not that works. In the meantime, I'm going to get out my trusty, wonderful striping brush, which is what I use to make the fine lines. A lot of people are very unhappy when they have to make fine lines, but fine lines can only be made with the right tool, and that is this brush. A striping brush, and also the consistency of the paint. So I'm going to be leaning really close in here to give you the sense of how I apply the dark color, which is part of the details that you have to have, especially that these are in the foreground. So pulling the color across some wet paint facilitates it, but the paint has got to be the right consistency. And a steady hand helps. If you have to support your hand with some kind of a stick, or with the other hand leaning on the easel, as you can see me doing, that is that's vital. I'm not saying that I have the steadiest hand, but I know that I have to, of course, stabilize it by leaning it on something. And this takes practice. There's no question about it. I don't want anybody to think that this is a simple operation, but what doesn't take practice? I don't think that there's anything that you could mention that doesn't take practice, whether it's the driving of a car, or the making of an egg, or the painting of a picture, or even how you throw a football. And that was for the fact that this television station deals a great deal in some excellent sports broadcasting. Even though I'm interested in the minimum in sports, I must admit that when I have seen what the Cablevision people do, that it's a wonderful coverage of those events, and so that takes practice as well. I'm blending into the shadow the darkness of this boat, pulling this color so that the shadow of the lapstrake goes into the deep shadow of the boat. With a clean brush, I'm going to apply pure white paint out of the tube to this deck area, and that kind of wraps around here in a perspective dilemma and a puzzle. All of the business of painting, of drawing a boat is a puzzle. I think that anybody who has attempted to do it will remember the frustration of trying to figure out how a boat is drawn. Nevertheless, this is somewhat a quick impression. I'm going to probably paint this lethal color here is being picked up by the white paint, and that means that at another time I'm going to have to wait for this paint to dry, apply a new coat of white so that the deck is pure white, and it now tends to be a little bit on the pink side because this color right here is very easily tints very easily the pale colors. I'm going to probably try to show the superstructure here without understanding exactly what it is, but it would be that you would change the consistency of the paint to so that it runs, so that it flows across the other colors, and to understand that it goes behind this this well arrangement. That's why when I'm doing these things on a time schedule, I haven't had the time for the paint to dry is not on my side, and therefore it is understanding that when I demonstrate these things, there is need for time change or for time waiting. If I can't, so that's approximately the way you would apply the superstructure over this, and the complication with it's structured in such a way. And this is all in the business of doing the final touches on it. There is another boat over here with a white superstructure, and that green paint seems to be maybe sort of set well enough to be able to apply, to overlay another a layer of white for this boat in the distance. And because time is running out, I'm going to just do the lines that go to the boat. They're going to give you the device, which I'm always talking about, how to lead the eye into the picture. How does that go? Let me see. This boat is sitting here like so, and it's going to get done more properly later on. But here, before too much time goes by, I'm going to get that trusty brush again, the striping brush, and I'm going to reduce the color of the white way down. I'm going to use flake white, not the quick drying, but the flake white, so that I can turn the consistency of the paint into a sort of a white ink. This may, and it may not work. Let's see if we can make it. I'm using this archival medium here, which reduces paint. You can see as the camera is showing you, I'm making this extremely liquid so that I can run the line to the boat. This may not seem important, but I think that it will, in the long run, the composition is going to be much more pleasing if this line runs. And this has to be done in one stroke, and I'm, you know, I hope I can pull it off. If I can't, well, then I'll just do it again, and when I finish the picture once and for all, you'll understand. So here I'm not going to talk anymore. Almost did it. Well, that's okay. If it just disappears into the distance, it's because it's far away. And then there's another line that goes down and hits the water, and that's rather interesting. This line goes down and hits the water and becomes dark after it's hit the water. So clean up the brush, get a little bit of dark tone on it, and get some dark tone on this, and then continue. Where does it go? Oh, it goes all the way over to here. And it meets the other one. See, the only way you can get me to be quiet and stop talking all the time is by making me do a line like that. And then when it hits the water, it sort of produces a little sort of a kind of a reflection underneath here of itself. There. If it works, good. If it doesn't, well, we tried. I'm going to give it a little bit of form underneath here because the brush is behaving so well. And when the brush behaves well, by golly, you thank it. For the most part, this is about as far as I can go on this one. This has taken 2 half hours to do. I'm going to sign it right down here on the lower right-hand corner in a brush. If the surface of the water needs a little bit more work, that can get done later. But as I pointed out a few times, if you sign your name in wet paint, it becomes part of the painting, and that means that it's there forever until, but if you sign it on top of dry paint, it can be easily taken off. Well, trying to catch one's breath after this rather pressured study, because it is complicated. A marine picture is complicated. However, maybe you got something out of it. Maybe some of the shortcuts that I have found out over these tortuous years were of help to you. Thanks for watching. Be sure to tune in whenever you see the Cable Easel is on. Maybe there will be something else fascinating going on. Bye-bye.